Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Growing Kentucky's Leaders. I'm one of your hosts, Sheldon McKinney.
And I'm your other host, Ruth Ann Feek.
And today we have a special guest, one of my favorite people, Anthony Koch. Anthony is a member of the Kentucky FFA Foundation Board of Trustees. He's a past chairman of our board. He is a dad to 4 boys, a husband to Jill, and he is the director of sales and marketing at Hallway Feeds. Anthony, but our guests are in for a treat today because folks who just love horses, I'm thinking about students who just think, I love horses. I want to work in this industry. I think it's great. They're going to fangirl over this episode and what you do. And let's begin by just telling them why. How about you start introducing yourself? Tell us how you got your start in the equine industry and just how deep your roots really are in this field.
Well, first, thanks for having me. It's an honor for you all to ask for me to be on the podcast. You've had so many great interviews on the podcast that I told Sheldon when she asked, I'm like, I'm not sure why you want to interview me, but I'm honored to be there. So thank you. Appreciate it. And as far as how did I start in the industry, I was born. That's and it started long before that. So a long family history of being involved in some way with horses. My grandfather was a writer for thoroughbred publications. His favorite place in the world was Keeneland Racetrack. My father, when he got out of Vietnam, came back to the States and he wanted to be on a horse farm. Grew up on a grain farm in rural southern Ohio, and he wanted to be on a horse farm. So he got a job with standardbreds actually in Paris, Kentucky, and that's where it began for him. So from standardbreds there in Kentucky at Stoner Creek Stud, which is still operational today. The farm it's called Hunterton Farm now at that same location, Stoner Creek Stud. From there, he got his first job with thoroughbreds up in Canada at Winfield's Farm. In Winfield's, he was there for a few years. Winfield's moved him to their Maryland division. And from there, he took a job with Claiborne Farm in Paris, Kentucky. And I was the first of the kids born back in Kentucky. So I had 2 siblings born while mom and dad were in Kentucky at Stoner Creek Stud, 2 siblings born while they were in Canada at Winfield's, 1 while in Maryland in Winfield's in Maryland. And then the last 5 of us born while we were growing up at Claiborne Farm in Paris, Kentucky. So if you're counting, that's 10 siblings. And we've all got our roots there in the thoroughbred industry for sure. So it goes way back, and it was just kind of a given, I guess. It was never even considered. But yeah, that's where it was going to be. That's where we were going to start.
You grew up on Claiborne Farms, which is a historical and incredible place in Kentucky. But for folks who may not be familiar, why is Claiborne Farms a special place?
The funny thing is, I didn't even realize it growing up. When you're a kid, you all probably felt the same way. You just assume everybody grows up like you do. And so we grew up on the back of Claiborne Farm, 3,000 acres, and I didn't think anything about it. We had paved roads to ride our bikes on. There were ponds to go fishing in. There was a lot of work to be done, a whole lot of fence lines to be weeded, and a whole lot of stalls to be mucked. And we didn't do that ourselves, obviously, a lot of employees out there. But it was just normal to me to have a farm and to have those things and access to that. It truly was not until college that I realized I grew up around a lot of special horses and a lot of special people. And I wouldn't say anybody has ever fangirled over anything I've ever done, Sheldon, as you mentioned earlier. But I realized a lot of people would really love to experience what we had access to growing up. So, I mean, grew up around the likes of, Mr. Prospector and Secretariat and, oh boy, we should talk about my SAE project and a stallion pulpit and just the access that we had to those things. And to us, it wasn't access, it was work. And then you look back now and go, wow, that was really special. So Claiborne Farm is one of the most historic nurseries for thoroughbreds in the world. Absolutely in the world. They celebrated their 100th anniversary a few years ago, and they have bred almost countless Kentucky Derby champions, Preakness, Belmont Stakes, Breeders' Cup winners. They have dam lines, the mare lines that are just champion after champion after champion. And anytime any of that pedigree shows up at a sale, you better bet people want to get a hold of that and get some of that into their farms. It's just such a historic breeding farm. And then it's one of my favorite places to visit because it's a gorgeous place. It's just natural beauty. It's not manicured like a golf course. It's very big old trees and green grass and big fields, and horses were meant to be outside, and that's what they get to do at Claiborne Farm.
Yeah.
It is beautiful. My mom and some friends of ours, we have like a little mother-daughter quartet of us four that go around, and we recently were at Claiborne, and it is beautiful. And like you said, it's not over the top. It's just beautiful.
Just natural
So,
beauty out there. Yeah.
yeah, what a great place to grow up.
Yeah. It was pretty special.
Yeah. Well, and all these roads have led you to where you are now, which is you work at Hallway Feeds. We mentioned that before. I just want to give you the opportunity to share with our listeners of, what Hallway Feeds is, who they serve, and if you've never heard of them, they really are such an incredible business for a lot of different reasons that we'll get to talk about some more on this podcast. But let's just start with like, who is Hallway Feeds and who do they
Sure.
serve?
Hallway Feeds really began in 1964. Mr. Bob and Miss Bonnie Hall purchased what was called Farmer's Feed Mill at that time. Small general feed mill, as the name would imply. In fact, there was 12 other stores just like Farmer's Feed Mill in the Fayette County area serving the local farmers. And it wasn't as much about manufacturing very feed for a niche market. It was providing feed for every species of livestock that there was in central Kentucky, as well as seed corn and anything else farmers might need. And that really changed over the years as Kentucky agriculture changed. Those 12 other stores that were around in Fayette County at that time, they don't exist anymore. They didn't change with the times. They wanted to be everything to everybody, and agriculture changed, and they didn't need that type of supplier anymore. And whether the Halls were that smart or they were the blind hog that found the acorn, they started trending towards manufacturing feeds for the equine community. Interestingly enough, it ties into my history just as a coincidence, coming from Claiborne Farm. They were really the first major farm that Hallway Feeds made a bagged specific equine feed for. And I've got the letters in a file back here in the office, and it goes back to the letters that were exchanged between Claiborne Farm, Dr. Baker at the University of Kentucky, and Mr. Bob Hall at Hallway Feeds about putting together that product. And so they went from the feed mill they were located in 1964. They built the location where we are now and started making feed here in February of 1986. And the transition was pretty significant at that time and then sped up as of the early 2000s. The only thing that we make is horse feed. A lot of safety and consistency reasons behind that. And so now it's not just here in central Kentucky. Growing up, I saw the bags in the barns, new Hallway Feeds, but just assumed it was a local product. Well, it turns out, we ship it. 50% of our business is right here in central Kentucky, around the thoroughbred industry and sport horse industry. But then 30% of what we do is domestically across the United States, from the bottom of Florida all the way over to California. Not a whole lot up north on the western coast, but then all the way back across to the top of New York, and all the major racing venues, all the major sport horse areas. It's really grown. And then 20% of the business is international and growing. I've been fortunate enough, never thought this would happen. Been fortunate enough, I've seen racing at, I think the number now is 54 different racetracks in 14 different countries.
Wow.
Kid growing up mucking stalls and dealing with horses, loved it, but I didn't realize what I would get to see because of it. And that's because of Hallway Feeds and the opportunities I've had here.
Yeah.
Hallway Feeds is truly more than just a business. And I appreciate you going over the business side of and helping our listeners understand. I have visited Hallway Feeds several times in this role and as a former ag teacher in Lexington, just on different tours. And the amount of detail that Hallway Feeds pays attention just to everything, and the hospitality, it really is a family business. You know that when you walk in the front door, you can buy Miss Hall's granola, right? Like in the store. Like that's just such a unique thing. So I just wanted you to share too, like the special sauce of Hallway Feeds and what those core values are that really help them stand apart from their competitors in the industry. And you don't have to share any big trade secrets there at Hallway, but yeah, what makes it so special? And um, I just think it's a really special place, and I would love for you to share more about that.
You know what? There are no secrets. Okay. I mean, Mr. Bob has always said we have nothing to sell but service. Because when it comes to making feed, and that's feed for anything, the government tells you what you can and can't do. I mean, there's levels, what ingredients you can use, what can be put on the label, what you can say about it. Um, there are no secrets really to making horse feed. Now, obviously, there's things that we do that are unique to Hallway Feeds. That's the business side of things. But as far as being the business, it's the culture, and what drives that culture is the Hall family, and to watch Mr. Bob have time for everybody that walks in that door. Mr. Bob has rocking chairs in his office. I think that says a lot right
Yeah.
there. If you come in to sit with Mr. Bob, he comes out from behind his desk and he sits next to you in a rocking chair. That sets the tone for the conversation that you're going to have right there. And you know you're going to have some wisdom imparted. I'm pretty sure it's in a country song and a lot of sayings, but if an old man's cutting up an apple with a pocket knife, you better sit down and listen because he's getting ready to impart some good wisdom, right? So it's that same sort of thing. To come into the office feels more like we're in a museum, and it's fun
Hmm.
to bring people into the office. And you love who wants to show off their office? I love showing off our office and talking about the artwork that's on the walls. Everything that's in here has a story behind it. Um, and then to go out in the mill, and we want to be company ready at any time. Again, there's no secrets. You want to come see the mill? Come see the mill. We're going to show it up. Now, if you got a school group, okay, we need to organize that to make sure we have people here.
Well,
But if it's available, we're going to show you the mill. You know, we love sharing, we love educating. And again, there's no secrets. It's treat people how you want to be treated. Um, be open, be fair, be honest. Sign, Ruth Ann, you mentioned it. As soon as you come in, you know it's family owned. Picture of the halls on the wall, and it says family owned, handshake operated. We don't have contracts with our clients. When we look you in the eye, we tell you what we're going to do, and we shake on it, and that's it. And not having a contract is a good thing in our opinion. It means we have to work hard to live
Hmm.
up to those expectations every day. You get a contract, and you're like, yeah, well, we got them, so as long as we don't breach something big, it's fine. No, that's not the deal. We have to work hard every day to make sure we don't break that. And so being a family business and having that culture where our team's important. Just this morning, our care team met. Who has a care team, right? Well, we have a team of employees, and they are the ones that review, request, and what are we going to donate to? What are we going to support? How do we take care of each other? We have an employee that falls on hard times, needs help. We've put together fundraisers for people that have had, and these aren't specific to employees, but people that have had house fires and gathering clothes and dishes. Whether we can help with a car that breaks down or rent or various fundraisers like 5Ks and packing boxes at Christmas time. That just goes and speaks to the family feel in everything that we do. And it is a wonderful place to work.
You could tell.
it is. I love going there. You know, your time as board chairman, we had so many meetings at your office because it was a central place for people. And I just think it's incredible. I love being there. I love the environment and the feel that people give. So job well done. I want
Yeah.
to make sure people know if they're not familiar with the equine industry, really, who are your clients? Is it just racehorses? What are you doing? Tell us a little bit about who you served and maybe like how many Kentucky Derby winners you fed or something like that.
Yeah, I mean we planted the flag there with the thoroughbred industry because historically that is what has really had its roots right here in central Kentucky is the thoroughbred industry. Unofficially, we are the horse capital of the world. It's what we say all the time. I know that Ocala, Florida has literally trademarked that saying, and they have twice as many horses as we do down in Florida. But when it comes to the value of the horses and the quality horses, man, they are here in Kentucky, and that's not just the thoroughbred industry anymore. Although that is the number one breed here in the state, we have a lot of sport horses. And I think there was a pretty big awakening back when Kentucky hosted the World Equestrian Games, was when the rest of the world realized the facilities that we have for all the sport horses and the Western disciplines. It's amazing how much has grown. How much polo has grown here in Central Kentucky. So yes, we did plant the flag here in Central Kentucky with the thoroughbred industry. At this point, we're feeding, and this is a bit of a made up number, but it has historical roots when we did a very large market survey about 10 years ago now. But at this point, we're feeding approximately 70% of the horse farms here in Central Kentucky. And that extended to the racetrack over the years. And we've now fed 16 Kentucky Derby winners when we added Mystic Dan this year with Kenny McPeak. Kenny McPeak, what an amazing story there for Lexington and Kentucky. Kenny McPeak is a Lexington born and raised horse trainer, and he trained the winner of the Kentucky Oaks this year, which is for the fillies, Torpedo Anna, who is an amazing racehorse. And I hate to, I hate to jinx something by talking about it, but if she can win another race or two this year, she might be in talks for Horse of the Year. And then he had Mystic Dan won the Kentucky Derby. That's either one of those is a lifetime race, and he won both of them the same weekend. And so those horses have continued to have wonderful summers. And so that really is where we planted the flag and started. And going on 12 years ago, I think at this point, we made a significant mind shift that we needed to serve the sport horse industry. And we hired a young lady, Morgan McQuarrie, who came in and has helped us to change just serving that business and how we take care of a business. And it's a different mindset to take care of the sport horse industry. And she's really helped us work with that and work with those people. And so it's been a lot of fun to see Olympic athletes or the other World Equestrian Games, or there's so many international shows and international Grand Prix, and with the way the business has grown in Texas and all the Western disciplines, it's mind-boggling to see how it's grown with all these other breeds and all these other disciplines.
I love it. There's so much to learn and so many opportunities. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to share a unique story that comes from you having such a big family, and that we had our gala in Lexington several years ago, and some of my colleagues from Georgia FFA came to experience our event, and they did some equine tourism while they were in the area. And that day at different places, they met at least two of your brothers. And then that night, I had them seated with you at the gala. So just randomly that day, they met three Cook brothers in their day in Lexington in different places. I think that's incredible.
Listen, it is, but it's a small industry. And I don't, what do we say? Oh, it's a small world. But when you get, and it's not just the horse industry, when you become a professional in almost any walk of life, you realize that your core group is a pretty small group. So all of my brothers have remained in the horse industry in some aspect. The sisters have not. All of them took turns over the years working in the office on the farm or different roles, but are not involved in the industry at this time. But all the brothers have remained involved in the industry. So currently, my oldest brother, Charles, works for Lucas Equine Equipment over in Harrison County. A lot of logistics for them on steel and ordering, reading blueprints. I mean, the detail in his job. I'm detail oriented, and he is that to the nth degree beyond me. Before, he had been the logistics coordinator for a horse transportation company, Lake Horse Transportation Company. And that's important because I'll tell you a story in a minute. My brother Stephen has been in racetrack management for most of his career, 12 years at Woodbine, up in Canada, a few years in Maryland for the Stronach Group, and now down with, I forgot NTRA racetrack inspections, and now down in Florida with the Florida Thoroughbred Horsemen's Owners and Breeders Association. Okay. Then the brothers on the farm that the Georgia group met, my brother Matt and Gus, they own and run Shawham Place. And Matt also serves in the Kentucky House of Representatives. Mm-hmm. So one day, several years ago, on that same note of meeting three brothers in one day, Sheldon, I went into a training barn up in at Fairhill, up in Maryland, and a trainer just stopped me. He said, "Oh, stop!" I said, "Whoa, everything all right?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I've had too many cooks today." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Listen, I got off the phone with your brother Charles about moving a horse up here. and I talked to your brother Steven about entering one at Woodbine, and it's coming. The horse that we're all talking about. I just talked to Matt about bringing the horse up from Shawham Place. He said, "Four's enough. I'm not talking to you today." I'm like, as long as the feed's fine, I don't need anything. So
That's
that's
great.
very specific. I mean, how unusual for somebody to come in for a visit from Georgia and then meet three brothers all in the same day. I can't imagine the story they went home
I
telling
know.
about
It's a
Kentucky.
great story. Well, you all are all involved in the equine industry. Your siblings mostly were also involved in FFA too. And so, in this busy time, you all worked on the farm. Your parents had a huge high work ethic that they instilled in all of you all. Why did they make time for all of you to get to experience FFA?
So my brother Matthew discovered for us, nobody had ever heard of it before. He discovered FFA uh, probably around 1994, 95, I think, his freshman year of high school. And it clicked for him. I mean, we all grew up on the farm, we all worked, and he discovered it and just fell in love immediately. Probably the most similar activity that the all the siblings had been involved in at that point was music. We'd all been in band up to that point, and Matthew was the first one to go, "This isn't for me. I want to do something else." And mom and dad were like, "You got to do something. You got to be involved. You got to participate." And he found FFA and fell in love with it. And then my freshman year, 2 years were stair stepped pretty much. 2 years behind Matthew, I came in. I'm like, sure, I'll join FFA. I get whatever. I didn't, high school freshmen. There are some that are very motivated and already know what they're doing. I was not one of them. And Matthew's like, join this. Great. I joined it. Well, I remember missing the first FFA meeting that was a club meeting my freshman year. And Matthew found me, not even after school, he found me in gym class. And he was like, why weren't you in there? And I'm like, I was in gym class. Why would I skip gym class? And he's like, you better figure this out. I never missed another meeting. And at that point, really got involved and interested. So from a committee chairperson to an officer role, vice president, and then president, and then regional office, believe regional vice president, and then state office, state treasurer. It's meant the world to me. And you can ask my wife; she's probably a better one to ask. Some of those things that have just been absolute game changers for me that really put me where I am today. FFA and farmhouse fraternity, because that service, that involvement, speaking, parliamentary procedure, land judging, livestock judging. There are so many things I did in FFA, the sales competitions, all these things that I have used throughout college and then into my life. I mean, we could talk about that for a long time. That's going to have to be a whole other
Show.
episode, Sheldon, because we could go on for a long time about all the experiences in FFA and ag education that helped me in college and then in life. And then I say farmhouse because just the involvement and then knowing former FFA members that were in the fraternity because I'd sworn it off because we were told our state officer year we were going to be so busy, and we were, and wouldn't have time. And mom and dad told us, you're going to make grades and you're going to do well. That was not an option to do otherwise. So fraternity life was not for me until a state officer buddy said, well, my brother, was in farmhouse. And I said, well, I'll go look with you. And then I go over there and they're former state officers and all these guys that I knew. And I'm like, wow. And farmhouse was important because it introduced me to my wife and it introduced me to hallway feeds through the opportunities I had there. And so FFA and farmhouse just really put me on the track to where I am today. No doubt about it.
I think the message I hope if students are listening and what they hear from you is what you're doing now as a high schooler or a middle schooler, wherever you're at, it matters. It's really setting you up for success later on. So showing up to your chapter meeting, going, signing up for a contest maybe you thought you'd never see yourself doing, all that stuff does really matter and it sets you up for success in a career later on. And we've kind of talked about this and we've been waiting to ask you just as an expert in the equine industry and you work with so many different people. I know you are an expert in the equine industry. I want to talk a little bit about these careers. I hope we have lots of equine classes tuning in, listening to this. And there's just so many students that really have an interest, especially in Kentucky, working in this industry in some capacity. Maybe they don't even know. They just love the industry and they want to work in it. What kind of employees does the equine industry really need with this new generation, and how should they be preparing right now?
everything. We need everything. And what's interesting is, as a young person, I wouldn't even understood what that meant. You think that if you're going to work with horses or in the horse industry, you think I have to own a farm, I have to be a veterinarian, I have to be a trainer, whether that's thoroughbred trainer, quarter horse trainer, sport horse trainer. You think I have to hold a horse every single day. Oh my gosh, that's just a couple of the jobs that are out there currently today. As we're talking today, I know this won't be released for a while, but just as an example, we need a logistics coordinator at Hallway Feeds. Okay, you think of feed mill where they're making feed and they're selling feed and they're delivering feed. Surely you just need somebody to bag it, somebody to sell it, somebody to deliver it, right? Not even close. A logistics coordinator, brand new position here. We're shipping so much feed. We need somebody paying attention to freight, international freight, the bills of ladings, the government documents. You wouldn't believe what goes into a role like that. We do need another delivery driver. I need a technical service assistant, somebody to go out, weigh, measure, record the data on growing horses every single day. We weigh over 2,400 horses a month here at Hallway Feeds, just like taking your kids to the doctor's office and getting them, all their growth measurements while they're growing. We do it every month for about 18 months on growing horses. And then turn that into research data, all the researchers that go along with. Everybody always thinks, oh, nutrition research, but there's lots of other things on proper ways to work out. Is it good to exercise and race a 2-year-old? You get conflicting opinions, but science actually has proved that training and exercising young horses actually lengthens their career because it helps develop the bone better. Man, production specialists that we hire now, it used to be you needed somebody that could fill up a 50-pound bag and stack it. We don't touch bags around here. Guys, we have robots that do that. We need people that can manage the laptop, take quality control samples. Maintenance used to carry a hammer and a grease gun. They carry a laptop, a hammer and a grease gun. But they have to be able to diagnose these problems and fix them. And you got to be creative sometimes out here and where you fix things. If you get a servo that messes up, it's electronics that are made by humans. It can fail. And so you got to be able to have a workaround while the parts are getting shipped in, things like that. So just the jobs that we have accountants, bookkeepers, marketing. We just this year, we hired our very first full-time marketing, social media, graphic design in-house. We used to hire that out of the house. So that's just here at Hallway Feeds. Think about the jobs on the farms. Yeah, absolutely. We need people in the barns. If you absolutely love the smell of horses and working with them, we need more of them. So come on, we got jobs for you. I promise. You call me, I can tell you, I'll send you to the farms. They need you today. And they're going to need you in 6 months from now or 12 months from whenever you're ready. We need you. But there's also the jobs in the offices, people that take pictures every day and do client relations, working at the sales, preparing all the marketing they need for going to the sales, or putting together syndicates that own horses at the racetrack. The jobs are endless. I didn't even realize, growing up in the industry, I didn't realize it. And every day you say, and thank you, you say you're an expert in equine industry. The more I learn, the less I realize I know. Does that make sense?
There's so much out there. Yeah.
There's so much more to be learned. And again, it goes back. I respect Mr. Bob, the owner of Hallway Feeds, so much. 94 years old. He refuses to stop learning. Every day he's learning more. He came in and asked our Mandy in marketing, he said, what are those little boxes with the squiggly lines in them that people point their phones at and it takes them somewhere? She goes, you mean a QR code, Mr. Bob? He goes, yep. Can you make one of those? I can. He goes, says, listen, I got cattle on my farm I want to sell. I want to put an ad in, I think, Cow Country News, and I want you to make that QR code that links to a video of my cattle for people to see.
Yeah.
We can do it, Mr. Bob. Now, Sheldon, how many people are close to our age that would be afraid of developing that kind of technology? And at 94 years old, Mr. Bob's like, let's keep learning, let's keep going. So never stop learning, you all. Yeah, lots of jobs.
So great, because I know ag teachers are telling students there are so many jobs in agriculture. If you have an interest in agriculture, we need everybody. And you just summed it up. We do. We need all those people.
And if you're looking, Kentucky Horse Council might have about the best spot for jobs with
Mm-hmm.
horses. They share a lot of jobs within the horse industry, and it's not just on farms. It's anything related to a horse. We like to share with them.
We'll shout
We'll
out
have to
to
link
we'll put
that
that
in
in
our
the show
show
notes.
notes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can see and check it out. Well, Anthony, that wraps up some of our discussion, but we always end by asking our guests the same three questions. I am excited to know your answer to these.
Before you get into those
Yeah.
SAE projects, I mentioned this earlier.
Yeah.
So
Please do.
this is really fun. Part of my SAE, my first part of my SAE was actually to have nurse mares. So for people in the industry, well, for people that don't know, a nurse mare is a mare that will raise a foal because of something that happened during foaling or there's a problem. So either the mare that had the foal didn't have enough milk. In this particular case that I'm going to talk about, the mare was overprotective of her baby. She was a great mother, but she would not let humans near her baby. And so her baby would be raised by a nurse mare. Part of my SE project was to have nurse mares that would raise thoroughbred foals. Lo and behold, my very first baby that was raised on a nurse mare a couple years later turns out to be the favorite for the Kentucky Derby. It was Pulpit, who won the Bluegrass Stakes, was the favorite for the Derby. He didn't win. He threw a shoe and chipped a bone in his knee, but he turned into an incredible stallion. I just think it's incredible. There I was in high school, and Tom Hammond, guys, go Google Tom Hammond. What an amazing individual he is, from here in Lexington, Kentucky. Grew up at the Cooper House over on UK's campus. His grandfather was the dean, and it's named the Cooper because I believe that was his grandfather's name. But Tom Hammond Productions came out and interviewed me as a 16-year-old in high school about my nurse mare, and I've got articles stored away amongst all my FFA materials about, my SAE project, my nurse mare that raised the favorite for the Kentucky Derby. Guys, you never know with your SAE project what could happen, and that was absolutely incredible to be a part of that.
I
It's
haven't
a
heard
great
that story.
story.
Little brag.
No, please do. That's awesome. I haven't heard that story. How many Derby winners do you think you have met?
Matt,
Met. Yeah.
now you're gonna make me go count. So at some point, I'm gonna have to go sit down and count.
Or a range.
Yeah.
It met. Gosh, it'd be in the 20s. I'm gonna go with.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
That's
gonna have to go
awesome.
count.
Not many people can
Yeah.
say that. Yeah.
The
It's a
only
big thing. Whenever we feed a Derby winner, it's a really big thing for us to try and get down to Churchill immediately following the race and get a picture with them. So
well,
been a bunch since I got here, but then I know through my childhood and other experiences I've met more.
yeah, that's so great. I've only met one Derby winner, and it was American Pharoah. We did a photo for our Ag Tech campaign with American Pharoah at one point, and he's a horse, but it was so special. It really was. It seemed so incredible and majestic, really. It was incredible.
You
And
met a special one. His behavior and how he interacts is different than a lot of Kentucky Derby winners turned into stallions. He's a little more behaved. He's a good one to me.
but we all were like all posed for the picture, and then they brought him out. It was like, okay, it's time. And he just came and stood like, I know what I'm here for to do. And he did great. It was,
The good ones do know.
He
yeah.
probably got a peppermint right after, I'm sure.
Probably. All right, three
Well,
questions.
okay, three questions. The first is, what is the best piece of leadership advice you've ever received?
There's a story that I relate probably too often to people that know me well. And I remember vividly walking through the barns at Keeneland during a September sale. Mr. Robert Courtney kind of popped out of a barn. He was an elder statesman at that point, and I was walking with my father, my brother Matt, probably Stephen. It was at least the three of us brothers there with Dad. And I remember him stopping us because Matthew had just, at that point, had just signed on to go to officer candidate school with the Marines. So he was already in college, but he was signing on to go to officer candidate school with the Marine Corps the last 2 years of college as well. And I remember him saying, there's a time to learn, there's a time to earn, and there's a time to serve. And that's always stuck with me. And while I've kind of shifted on that a little bit because I don't think we break those up as much now as we used to. I think when Mr. Courtney was growing up, you learned, you went to school, you earned, you worked, and then when you made that living and your kids were grown, you served. That was your time to go and give on and serve on boards. I think we mix all those at the same time anymore. But the point is that those are three very important things that you need to do. It, you need to learn and you need to never stop learning. My story about Mr. Bob, that just deepened that for me. Never stop learning. You need to earn, okay? It is important, right? I'm married, got 4 boys, 2 are in college, senior and a sophomore in high school, gonna have 2 more in college soon. You got to earn. Now, it's not everything. That's not all there is, and that's why it's part of this. And the other part is you got to serve. To me, it's very important to serve. I would not be a happy person if I was not a part of meaningful experiences, serving on the foundation board for Kentucky FFA, being very active in my church community, other leadership roles, whether it's Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts over the years, American Feed Industry Association. I would not be a happy person if I did not have all 3 of those in my life. So tailor it to your needs if you're listening. But to me, that there's a time to learn, a time to earn, and a time to serve always stuck with me profoundly.
Yeah, that's really applicable, I think, to any of our listeners of any ages, no matter where they're at. Our next question we always ask, you know better than most people, Anthony, that the foundation here is a philanthropy where we're based on just giving back. It's what we do, what we love to do. But we recognize a lot of people give back to us in many ways. And one of those ways is through their time and just helping us grow and develop as leaders. Who is one person that you'd like to shout out that's really helped pour into you to develop you as a leader? I know it's a hard one.
What one person can't do it, but I'm going to have to go back and say the biggest example of serving and being a leader, it was my father. I didn't realize it. We don't realize it when we're kids, the lessons were being taught. Uh, but by golly, if it snowed, we were at church shoveling the sidewalks before anybody else woke up. Yeah, there was an old lady that couldn't mow her yard. Cook boys were there mowing the yard. Um, Dad served, Dad gave back, and stories that I didn't even know about until after he passed. And my oldest brother related this one. So at Christmas time, Dad never took the bonus and bought toys for all 10 kids. He took his Christmas bonus and turned it in cash and gave it away to the guys on the farm that he knew needed it more than we did. And he was right, you know. But wow, talk about serving and giving back. You tell me a guy with 10 kids couldn't have used that? I'm sure he could have, but he knew that there were people that needed more. So just his example, serving on school board, we grew up, we went to St. Mary's School in Paris, and what Dad gave to the school and how he volunteered. Probably the greatest example I had without ever saying a word that you need to do this. Just saw it.
It's a great example.
Yeah, that's great. I want to say more about that at the end, but last question. I'm anxious to see your answer because you have inspired us to have a lot of gadgets and things and habits. You are a learner. What is something that you're loving right now that's helping you grow?
So, and I actually thought about this because I watch your podcast, right? And know you ask these. I'm going to cheat and tell you there's 2 that I love. Remarkable.
Yeah.
Okay. I love I love my remarkable. So people see me pull this out and they'll go, "What is that?" And I'll go, "Well, it's remarkable." And they're like, "Yeah, but what is it?" "Oh, sorry, no, that's the name of it." All this is digital paper. Okay. I don't receive text on it. I don't receive emails on it. This is all my note taking in one place. I don't have a folder for the Kentucky FFA Foundation, a folder for my church activities, a folder for anything else I serve on. This is everything in one place. And you probably, maybe you can't see some of it, but
Yeah.
I got the folders at the top. You open that folder and you go into it, and it's broken down. Maybe one's just a marketing folder, one's just a sales folder, one is for our director team, one is for the FFA Foundation board, one is just for family. So no matter what meeting I go to, I have all my notes available to me. Now, you're thinking, why do that? Why not just keep paper? I've seen everybody's paper notebooks, and you lose pages, and I can search this. I can turn my handwriting into text if my handwriting was neater, so I don't turn my handwriting into text on this one. All my notes in one place. It's focused, no distractions. I really do like this. So that one's pretty special. And another one that's just easy is Calendly. If you're going to schedule a meeting, Calendly, CALENDLY.com. Don't go, well, are you good at 2? Oh, no, you're not. So what about tomorrow morning? Don't do that. Here's a link. Pick a time that works for you. It syncs right to my calendar, and it's just easy. It's so much easier to pick out a meeting instead of the back and forth. Love those 2 things.
I
It
also
is.
love Calendly. Yeah.
Not figure it out, but I've got to, because every time I'm like, man, I want to figure it out, and then I choose it, and after somebody chooses one meeting, it's like, well, there's no more times for anybody to choose. I have a setting wrong. I cannot figure it out. My elder millennial is showing with Calendly.
Next time you're up here, I'll help you with it.
Yes, okay, good deal. I've been to so many meetings where people have asked you about that remarkable, and every time I'm like, man, I want one of those, and I don't have one yet. So that was great. Anthony, thank you for being with us today. We have worked together for several years, and I can tell you, you are a learner, an earner, and a server. And it has just been awesome to see you parent your boys, lead well there, to serve Kentucky FFA, to serve the equine industry. You've been a real treat, and it's been a pleasure to get to just know your family and get to be friends and workers to do good things together. It's an honor.
Thank you. Thank you for saying all those things. I love working with you all, and we probably don't say it enough. Our team at the foundation is amazing. Sheldon, you've been there. It's over 10 years. We celebrated that.
13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ruth Ann, you're coming up on 2.
Coming up on 2 in January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible. And then we have Ashley, which a lot of people don't get to see and meet, but Ashley's incredible. I mean, her detail and keeping the numbers right and everything. You 3 are an amazing group, and the foundation loves you. And all the kids across Kentucky need to thank you all every time they see you. You should be their heroes.
Oh, well, thank you, Anne.
Sweet.
I appreciate all we've done, and I hope that our students have learned from this episode. So thank you for joining us on this episode of Growing Kentucky's Leaders. Growing Kentucky's Leaders is a podcast brought to you by the Kentucky FFA Foundation. Our music is performed by Bourbon County FFA member Joe Fritch. Artwork is by Julie Fritch Creative. Your hosts are Sheldon McKinney and Ruth Ann Fink, and you can find us on all social platforms at Kentucky FFA.